Good morning. Welcome to PLAR History and Geography on this Thursday, December the 1st. Again, my name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for this course, and I am back. Yes, I was away Monday, Tuesday. I was in Mississauga for a workshop on autism and self-regulation, anxiety, behavioral, and all those other issues. It was a fantastic workshop. Definitely learned a lot. Yeah, definitely had a great time down there. But I'm back. So this is Thursday. So this is our second day of this week, which means that we missed class on Tuesday. We were going to do a makeup class next Friday, but things just changed at the moment. So we're going to do that makeup class that we missed on Tuesday tomorrow morning. Okay, so if you want to make note of that, so tomorrow morning, Friday, December the 2nd, at this time, 9 a.m. Central Time, we'll do our makeup class. I will send an email out to all the DC and post it on my Facebook status once I get back to my office, but we'll do a makeup class tomorrow morning. Okay, so hopefully that doesn't interfere with anything. Again, I apologize that I was away on Tuesday. I know that some of you are always, you know, need us here in class, but again, I apologize if that caused any interference or whatnot. But we're back now. Again, class today, right now, live, and we'll do our makeup class tomorrow morning that we missed on Tuesday. Okay. Any questions on that? Any confusion? So again, we missed class on Tuesday. I was away. We were planning to do a makeup class next Friday, but things just changed and things worked out. And we will do a makeup class tomorrow morning that we missed on Tuesday. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Alrighty. So hopefully after that, after tomorrow, we'll be back on track. Again, this is week number 3 of term 1B. Again, hopefully everyone's still working on your assignments. Again, if you need any help, please let me know. Remember, I'm here to help. Again, if you want to call in right now and participate in class right now live, you can call the Wasa Studio at your learning center, at your community, or at home. The or works. Again, if you need any help with your assignments or have any questions or you're stuck and frustrated, just let me know. Give me a call during my office hours, cells on evening weekends, email, Facebook, okay, any other ways you can get a hold of me. Again, there's tons of review materials. You can go back and look at my YouTube channel where I post all this lessons after it's recorded afterwards. It's also on the archive page as well, so you can even go back and check out materials from term 1A. Okay, so term 1A and 1B is up right now, and so forth. Okay, so again, many ways you can get content that you miss and that you can get caught up. And that's all the announcements I have for right now in terms of community visit for this term. I'm scheduled to go to Mish and Big Trout at some point this term. Barry, myself, are planning on going to Mish before Christmas and the holidays come around. So hopefully within the next few weeks. In terms of Big Trout, we're still planning on that. And again, any announcement in terms of my absence and my travel, I will make note of it live in class so that everyone is on the same page. But as of right now, nothing. Everything's back on normal schedule. So it's been like a week since we're together, so let's kind of quickly review what we talked about. Last class, a week from today, we pretty much wrapped up lesson number 1, where we looked at Canada between the wars. We looked at Canada during the 1920s and the 1930s. So let's quickly zip through these slides and see if we want to review anything. So again, our learning goals last class was to identify the cause of the Great Depression, determine the lasting impact of the Great Depression had on Canada, and identify some of the social improvement made by the temperance movement. Again, these are our learning goals. Our learning goal is to help you see what will achieve or guide you through our lessons and what you should be able to achieve at the end of that lesson. So hopefully we all have an understanding of what caused the Great Depression, the impact of the Great Depression, and what the temperance movement was all about. So hopefully we had that understanding from last week. Again, 1920s was a decade of the hope. Again, it was a time of excitement, prosperity, good times, depending on what class you fell under, either an upper class, middle class, but not so much for the poor and working class. Again, a lot of new technology came out of the 1920s, cars, automobile, telephone, radio, medicine, technology, electricity. A lot of new items and goods came out of the 1920s. But again, depending on your social status, more Canadians have nots than haves. Then we looked at what was the Great Depression. Again, a dark period in Canadian history, left many lives bruised, shattered, and broken. We looked at a lot of factors. Again, what caused it, what was so dreadful about it, how did it create so much fear that will haunt people for a lifetime. Again, just some questions that I posted to create some thinking. Again, it all started because of the stock market crash, which left jobs and companies went bankrupt, which means people lost their jobs, they were laid off. Again, about 1/3 of Canadians lost their jobs. Again, the cause of it, well, it can be argued in so many ways, but it was basically just a time and a place where many companies were making more products than people could afford or have. So again, we have so much items and goods that's being created in the factories, but not many people are buying them. So now we have so much items and goods that people are not buying. So it's going to waste in a way. So again, which led to the stock market crash, which led to the Great Depression. Really impacted Canada in many ways and fashion. It also affected many countries around the world. Here in Canada, farmers in the prairies, again, we had drought, we had the grasshopper plague. Uh, Other countries started producing more grains than Canada. Not many people could afford fuel for their cars. Again, they really had to rely on luck because they couldn't pay their bills, or didn't have any income. So it was really a hard time for those farmers. Other areas in Canada, so again, mainly people lost their jobs and just massive layoffs. Okay, massive layoffs. And then we looked at the temperance movement. Again, a group of women uh, thought that they wanted to ban the sale of alcohol and its consumption. There were a social and political campaign. They really wanted to change Canadian society in their viewpoint. However, the Canadian government really didn't listen. They really ignored all their suggestions. Therefore, the temperance movement or these groups of women thought that the only way to change was to get the right to vote. Okay, they wanted to get the right to vote. As you recall, women again had less rights, privilege compared to men during this time period. And in the end, women finally did won the right to vote, but it didn't really happen till various years in terms of provincial. It varied from 1916, 17, 18, all the way up to 1940 in Quebec. But women won the right to vote federally in 1917, 1918. Okay, so again, note those different years. Again, all this is in your textbook. We talked all about these topics more in depth last class, but we're just zipping through just to get a quick review of what we talked about. And then we wrap things up by looking at assignment number 3. Big assignment out of 29 marks. Again, just a reminder when you're doing your assignments, just go back and look at the success criteria in terms of writing full, complete sentences with details. Again, don't just copy straight word from word, paragraph from paragraph in the textbook. So, for example, question number 2, where I ask you what happened to cause the Great Depression. Yeah, you can find out in your textbook, but the second half to that question asks, do you think we could ever have another Great Depression? Why or why not? For that part, you cannot find that in your textbook. Okay. For that one, it's basically your opinion, kind of like a reflection in terms of what do you think? Okay. Do you think another one could happen? Give some examples in terms of what you think, what you see. But again, all those opinion-based questions, what you think, or how do you feel? Do you like this? Okay, you cannot find that in your textbook. Okay, you have to use your critical thinking skills. Again, you cannot find that in your textbook. Again, pretty straightforward for assignment 3. A lot, just more questions that we just touched upon. Any questions about that? Awesome. So let's get to what we're going to talk about in terms of today's class. Not a huge lesson, but not a short lesson either. So we are starting a brand new lesson, lesson number 2. It just means that we're just starting a new lesson. It doesn't really mean much, but again, we're still follow along, looking at Canada since the 1900s. We looked at 1920s, 1930s, which means that now we'll be looking at the 1940s. Okay, so what happened in the 1940s? The Second World War. Okay, so that's our main focus for today. All this starts on page 12 in your textbook. So if you're following along at home or in your learning center, you can follow along by flipping to page number 12 in your textbook. But our focus today will be looking at Canada and the Second World War, which took place between 1939 to 1945. Lesson number 2, this is where we'll begin today. But before we begin, does anyone know anything about the Second World War that you want to share to the class? Any thoughts, comments? Do you know anything about the Second World War? Do you want to learn anything about the Second World War in particular? Okay. Think about those questions. Again, we can always expand as well. So let's get to our learning goals. Again, it relates to the curriculum, but it doesn't really, you know, go word for what's in the curriculum. But again, there's just some things that I kind of pulled out of it in terms of the grade 10 history CHC2 class. So by the end of today's class, you will be able to 1. Understand the cause and effects of the Second World War. 2. Understand Canada's contribution to the war efforts. Okay, these are 2 main goals that we're looking at for today. Again, these are 2 topics that I will help you guide through today's lesson, and hopefully by the end of today's class, you'll be able to identify these learning goals. Again, understand the cause and effects of the Second World War, and understand Canada's contribution to the war efforts. It's very similar to the First World War, but there are some changes that we'll talk about right now. Just some background content. The textbook does talk about this, but it goes very, very briefly. But I'm gonna expand just a bit on what led to the Second World War, so that everyone has a good, same fundamental background of what is in store. So as you recall, after World War I, which ended in 1918, many countries signed the Treaty of Versailles, and it really blamed Germany for all of its hostility. pretty much pointing fingers and say that Germany caused the First World War. Germany, like all the other countries around the world, were in depression because of the Great Depression. There were unemployment. Again, this all impact or had influence of the stock market crash because of the Great Depression the decade before. So just like Canada, it was in a little dark period. Germany was in a much darker period because they lost the war, the First World War. The Great Depression happened and it impacted them as well. So again, not an exciting time for Germans. However, Hitler, Adolf Hitler, uh, stepped up and was a huge factor. Again, very controversial figure in terms of world history. You may have heard of his name before. He stepped up and pretty much gave Germans the voice of reason. Okay, hope that Germany can be big and powerful again. Lots of propaganda were used during this time period. Germany government was now under fascism, and it was led by the Nazi Party under Hitler. Again, Germans at this time didn't really have much to cheer for, so they really believed in Hitler, and as a result, they voted him into power in 1933. And he pretty much used a lot of false advertisements, and again, like I said, propaganda that blaming, pointing fingers at the Jews, that they cheated the countries, and he pretty much just believed in German. Okay, pure German ethnicity, nothing else. If you're not German, you are not seen as ideal, uh, proper for the way of living. Okay, so again, Germany in his mindset was the ideal way of living. So that was Hitler, that was Germany during this time period. But how it started, again, it can be argued in so many ways, but again, alliance took place between Hitler, Germany, and Italy and Mussolini. They began an alliance in 1936. A lot of invasion happened in 1938. Germany took countries. Germany took countries. And again, this really violated the Treaty of Versailles, where you're not supposed to invade and take over territories then. So again, other countries in Europe saw this as like a alarm bell, saying that what just happened? Why are you taking other countries? Why are you invading others? And they really saw this as a threat, and Germany and Italy must stop. But that didn't happen. Germany continued to invade. They took over Poland, and as a result of all that chaos of taking over land and assuming power and expanding the empire, Germany and France declare war on Germany in 1939. So again, that's how the Second World War broke out. Again, we don't need to really know all the events that led to it, who took who, what happened. But again, in a little nutshell, it's important, but it's not our main goal. Okay, but again, just keep that in mind. Canada. Okay, going back to looking at Canada. This is on page 12. Okay, this is gonna start looking at this on page 12 in your textbook. So at this point in time, Canada is slightly different than it was during World War One. Canada declared war on Germany 7 days later or after Britain did. Canada declared war by themselves. They were not forced to go to war uh, like during World War One. During this time, Canada is no longer part of the British Empire. Through other events, we have established that we're our own identity and nation. So we declare war by ourselves. We didn't have to, we're not forced to, but we wanted to by ourselves. The reason Canadians joined the war efforts was simply because of the Great Depression. As you recall, the Great Depression laid off many Canadians. Many Canadians lost their jobs in the 1930s, and as a result, we did not have much to do. And since the Second World War just broke out, why not go? Okay, so simply because of the Great Depression, uh, left many of them with no jobs, Canadians decided to go. Okay, so that was one of the main reasons why Canadians joined the war efforts and declared war on by themselves. Okay, so again, what I really want to emphasize on this slide is that Canada declared war by themselves and that they were not forced to go to war like they did during World War One. Okay. Again, that's all on page 12. It's highlighted in bold. Can't miss it in your textbook. Again, during this time period, again, Germany still invaded numerous countries. Canada and Britain really were just washed on, and all of a sudden, Britain saw Canada as its biggest ally. Okay, but with fear of all this invasion going on in Europe, they sensed that there was no stopping. Okay, in the near time. They thought that Britain would be invaded next, and then soon afterwards, they believed that North America will be attacked or invaded afterwards. Okay, so again, kind of another reason why Canadians stepped up and joined the war efforts. Next topic deals with Canada's contribution to the war efforts. Arsenal of Democracy. Again, this is on page 12 in your textbook. And it really relates to the home front. Okay, so if you recall what the home front was during lesson 1, where we talked about World War One, very, very similar. Okay, very, very similar. Arsenal of Democracy simply means Canada's contribution to the war efforts. We did a lot of good things to help during the war efforts. We produced lots of weapons, fuel, household goods, foods for our troops overseas. Again, anyone that didn't go overseas and fought or volunteered stayed back in Canada, and they really contributed during these ways. Again, producing weapons, fuel, household goods, food for our troops. Again, women stepped up in a big way. They took over jobs that were available. They took over tasks that were held by men. They really took over these tasks. Okay, so women in the workforce. Again, we didn't really see many women in the public sphere or in factories or the workforce. But again, this is not a stepping stone so that they proved that they could take over these tasks while men were overseas. Children got involved. They fundraised, they created care packages, and did other duties like talk in school and churches and create awareness. Again, very similar to the home front during World War One. They were great help to the war efforts, but it was really a collective, collaborative effort. Okay, it really brought a sense of a community, strong identity to Canada where everyone got involved. Okay, not just one individual, one group, but everyone got involved. Okay, all this couldn't happen without the helps of everyone. Okay, women, all children, and everyone else that didn't go overseas. Okay, so again, here in Canada, we were a great help to war efforts. So again, something that we can be really proud of. Mackenzie King. We're going to talk about him again. Mackenzie King was Canada's Prime Minister during the Second World War, and during his time, he created lots of different measures and acts to help Canadians during these tough times. He created three. Again, all three of these are in your textbook. They are on page 13. So if you want to refer back, it's on page 13. So what did Mackenzie King do? Well, one, he introduced the Unemployment Insurance Act of 1940. Okay, the Unemployment Insurance Act of 1940. What was it? Well, again, anyone can collect unemployment money for a period of time if they had proved or provided that they had worked before. So if you have lost your job and that you can prove or provide that you had worked before, becoming unemployed, you now can collect money from the government under this Unemployment Insurance Act. Okay, so again, it's kind of like a social welfare program that really helps citizens during rough times. So if you had worked full time before, then boom, all of a sudden you lost your jobs, you now can collect unemployment money under this act, provided that you had worked before. Okay, so again, very, very key measure that was introduced by Mackenzie King. Second, Family Allowance Act. Okay, the Family Allowance Act 1944. This was based on family. So family with children can now collect something known as baby bonus money. Okay, so the more children you had in your house, the more baby bonus money that you can collect. The purpose of these baby bonus money was to help pay for basic necessity for living. So food, shelter, clothing, and others. Okay, so again, depending on how many children you have, the more you get. You have one children, you still can collect baby bonus money. Again, I don't know exactly how much money it was collected back then, but I believe it still is in play now in terms of today, up until the age of like 18, give or take, where I believe each month or each year, give or take, each children had money known as baby bonus money. Again, the purpose was it to help pay for food, shelter, clothing, and other factors as well. So that was the Family Allowance Act. And lastly, victory bonds. Okay, it wasn't really a measure, but it just continued similar to World War One. Victory bonds again was to help raise money for the war efforts, where citizens, Canadians, can borrow money at a low interest rate and then cash it in later for principal plus interest, okay, or other goods. Okay, so you can buy victory bonds, which helps uh, fund the war efforts at a low interest rate, and then it can be cashed in later on for other purpose. Okay, so that's victory bonds. Similar in World War One, but it just still continued during the Second World War. So that's Mackenzie King, Canada's Prime Minister during this time period, during the Second World War. He created three measures, three acts. Again, Unemployment Insurance Act, the Family Allowance Act, and the Victory Funds. Again, please make note of all three, because on your next assignment, it'll ask for what did Mackenzie King do. So basically, as you can note, things are changing. Okay, it was a different Canada based on what was being implemented in terms of what acts were being played. We knew the effects and factors that came out of the Great Depression in the 1930s, so we wanted to avoid the return of the 1930s distress. Okay, we don't want that anymore. We don't want that fear, that uncertainty for Canadians. If something happens like the Great Depression, we now want our government to do something about it. Okay, we want to avoid what happened in 1930s. So again, we have now the Unemployment Insurance Act and the Family Allowance Act. Again, that really helped families in many, many ways. Okay, so again, but on an international scale, Canada can now protect her own interests and now can contribute to the war events on its own. Okay, so again, Canada is now recognized as its own distinct nation. We can now make decisions on our own, and we are starting to make a name for ourselves back then. So again, things are starting to change a lot. Going back to Canada's contribution to the war efforts, little side notes, there was something known as Camp X. Camp X is on page 12 in your textbook. Again, this relates to Canada's contribution to the war efforts. So Camp X, it happened here in Canada. It didn't really open for a really long time. It opened from 1941 to 46. Camp X was simply a secret commando training institution where they train secret agents, spies, assassins to fight Germans. Okay. It opened where it was located near Oshawa in southern Ontario, but more than 500 trained at this institution. It was top secret, first one in North America, and the only one in the Western Hemisphere. What's unique about Camp X was that you didn't learn just the basics strategies that you will learn, but it was more high end in terms of secret codes, how to enter and exit buildings without being caught or seen, how to climb cliffs, use special weapons, how to get on and off moving trains, and how to cross landscape at nights, and so much more. Okay, this was just not any ordinary training institution, but it was high-end secret commando institution training. Okay, this is Camp X. Again, it was established here in Canada. So for example, the RCMP we have here in Canada, some of them trained at this institution. The FBI in the United States trained at this institution. So again, very high-end, very secret. So if you in your textbook, it had a little fun fact where the character of James Bond was based because of this institution known as Camp X. Okay. And our last slide for today talks about constituous objectors. Very interesting, very controversial. Okay. Constituous objectors, this is on page 13, by the way. Simply, they were Mennonites, Amish, and Jehovah Witnesses. They simply didn't want to go to war. Okay, they were not in agreement to go to war. They refused any engagement at all. They seen it as neutral, believe Christians should be neutral in war conflicts. Again, they had many reasons based on deep personal reasons. It could be ethnical reason, religious reasons, and moral reasons. Okay, but simply they didn't want to go to war. Okay, they refused to go to war, refused any engagement. Again, personal factors, ethnical reason. Simply they didn't want to kill anyone. They seen it as wrong, not ethical. But again, that is their point of view, but what you think could be completely different. Okay, so for example, if your country or if your community had to go to war, would you go? Would you not go? Why? Why not? For what reasons? But constituent objectors fell under this category. Again, they just simply thought it was wrong and not right based on these reasons. Again, personal, ethnical, religious, and moral reasons. Okay, these were conspicuous objectives. They didn't want to go to war. Okay, similar to the French Canadians where they didn't want to go. Again, conspicuous objectors fell under this category. They just didn't want to go. They had no influence, no involvement whatsoever. Okay. Any questions? Great. Uh, Someone plug in some indigenous content, 1940s. During this time, Canadian government really ignored all the treaty promise that was promised during Confederation. But after the Second World War in 1845, there were a greater political consciousness within First Nations. Okay, so Canadian society, the public, started to see what was going on in First Nation communities. There was an increase of Canadian awareness of Aboriginal issues. Again, all these issues that was happening in reserves and First Nation communities, they started to emerge, and people started to hear their stories and see what was going on. Again, all this didn't really happen until after the Second World War, okay, in 1945. Again, a lot of this prior was ignored, uh, didn't take into account. But after this, things started to change slowly. Okay, there were greater awareness that started to emerge for First Nations. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But let's get to your next assignment in your workbook, and that is assignment number 4. Okay, assignment number 4. A much shorter assignment is out of 14 marks. Again, I just want to emphasize details, sentences, proper spelling, grammar, punctuations is all taken into account. Remember, we're always trying to improve our writing skills. So again, no jot notes. Please use full sentences. Show me your thinking. Don't just copy the whole paragraph in your textbook. Again, just answers what's being asked. Don't need to just answer other factors. Just answers what's being asked in details in your own words. Question number 1. What was the main reason Canadian citizens joined the Second World War? We talked about this in today's class. You can find that on page 12. Okay, so you can start by writing kind of like a little exemplar that I'm writing. Yeah, you can always start off something like this by saying Canadian citizens joined the Second World War. Canadian citizens joined the Second World War because, again, you say your answer. Again, the Great Depression left them with no jobs, something like that. Again, question number 2, why was Canada known as the Arsenal of Democracy? Okay, Arsenal of Democracy. Again, this is also on page 12. Again, you can start by writing something like Canada was known as Canada was known as the Arsenal of Democracy because why? Okay. Great contribution to the war efforts. What did we do? Again, that's all on page 12. Okay. Question number 3, what was Camp X? Again, you can write by Camp X was a what? Okay, what was Camp X? Details about it. Again, I don't need to know that it was influenced by the James Bond character or whatnot, but or the date it was established. But what was Camp X? What was his purpose? Okay, think about his purpose. Okay. I don't need to know the date it was established, but what was his goal? What was his purpose? What was his reason? Okay, just keep that in mind. Question number 4 deals with Mackenzie King. In order to ensure Canadians had their basic needs met, the Canadian government, led by Mackenzie King, took specific steps. Name the 3 measures created to provide financials to families and describe their purpose. Okay, so we're looking at Mackenzie King. We need to note just 3 measures and describe its purpose. This is on page 13 in your textbook. Again, they were the Unemployment Insurance Act, the Family Allowance Act, and victory bonds. Okay. So I'm going to start by writing being created Unemployment Insurance Act and victory bonds. Okay. But then you need to tell me, then it tells you to ask describe each one. Okay, describe each one. So you're going to describe each of these 3. Okay, so what was the Family Allowance Act? What was the Unemployment Insurance Act? And what were victory bonds? Okay, so yes, Mackenzie King created these 3, but details, okay, describe what they were. Okay, so again, I gave you a little head start in terms of what they were. Your job now is to describe what they were. Okay. And lastly, who were the constituent objectors? Again, it's on page 13. Who were the constituent objectors? Again, why didn't they want to go to the war? Why did they want to be engaged? What were the reasons? Okay. Who were they? And stuff like that. Okay, again, that's all on page 13. It's highlighted in bold, constituent objectors, and tells you who they were. Okay. Are there any questions in terms of what we talked about today in terms of lesson number 2? Assignment number 4. We do have a bit of time right now, so I'm going to give the class some time right now to work on any outstanding materials. It could be this assignment, it could be last assignment, it could be any other assignments, it could be geography assignments for that matter, but we do have a bit of time now in class. Use that time. If you have any questions, let me know. We're here live right now, and I'll be more than happy to help. Okay, so again, always work on your assignments. Try to get them done as soon as you can. Remember, I am here to help. Okay. So again, just a reminder, tomorrow we are doing our makeup class. Okay. Things change. We now have our makeup class tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Time. Okay, that's 10 for all those in Eastern time slot, but we'll do our makeup class that we miss on Tuesday tomorrow. Okay, just keep that in mind. Okay, our original plan was to have this done next Friday, but since it can be done now, things change, so we'll just do it tomorrow. Okay, which means that after tomorrow's class, we'll be back on track. No more class switches. We won't have 3 classes next week. We'll just go back to our normal schedule of Tuesdays and Thursdays for next week. But again, makeup class tomorrow, Friday, December 2nd, at this time slot. I'll come back here. We'll continue where we left off just now, which means that we'll continue to look at Canada during the Second World War, where we'll talk about Japanese involvement and how they had challenges and struggles that they had to overcome, and the conclusion of the Second World War. What happened, how it finished, who won, who lost, and what events led to it. Okay, so again, really short lesson again tomorrow. So again, more time for everyone to catch up on your assignments. Maybe we'll do a bit of review materials tomorrow as well. But depending on what we have, depending on any questions you may have, we'll go from there. Okay. So again, after right now, I'm gonna go back to my office. I will send an email to all the DCs. I'll post this on my Facebook status. But again, makeup class tomorrow, Friday, December 2nd, 9 a.m. Hope they can join me live. I'd love to chat with everyone. But other than that, continue to work on assignments. I think I'm going to stop it here for today. We'll pick it up tomorrow morning. And I'll see everyone then. All right. Thank you, class.